everybody, members of the public particularly, to the April meeting of the Combined Authority. Before moving into the detail of the meeting, just a few of the usual housekeeping points. Can I remind everyone that all mobile phones should be turned to silent for the duration of the meeting. To ensure that everyone in the chamber can hear the debate, can I please ask that members and people presenting reports use the microphones provided. And finally, as usual, the meeting will be filmed by officers from the Combined Authority and will be available on the Knowsley Council YouTube channel later today. So, without further ado, item 1 is apologies. Do we have any apologies?
We have apologies from Councillor Wesley.
Okay, so we'll record those apologies. Item 2, declarations of interest. Have any declarations of interest been received?
None received.
Okay. Item 3, minutes of the last meeting of the Combined Authority held on the 6th of March. It's in your agenda pack, pages 1 to 6. Can I ask, are these approved as a correct record of that meeting? Is that agreed? Sign them. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, and that takes us to the first main item, which is item 4, Sustainable Transport Enhancements Package, Step Change for Growth. And Frank Rogers, you're going to take us through this, please, Frank.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this report is to request Combined Authority approval of the next major scheme business case. It's the Sustainable Transport Enhancements Package, or STEP, as we call it, that we're looking to get approval for, associated with the growth deal funding, and it's for years 1 and 2 of the STEP delivery programme. The Liverpool City Region is managing a programme of developing major schemes to take advantage of the investment available through the local growth fund. As leaders will be aware, there are 13 schemes on a prioritised list of some of the City Region's most pressing investment priorities for transport. That's gone through a prioritised process, and they're scheduled out as detailed in the City Region's Transport Assurance Framework. Following that shortlisting, partner authorities across the City Region have continued on the development of those 13 major business cases, and they address some of the most urgent transport and highway issues that we face in the Liverpool City Region. Those 13 schemes are covered in Table 3.2. The Combined Authority have previously approved major scheme business cases for 3 of those schemes at the meeting of the 23rd of January 2015, and the access to Knowsley Industrial Park, the A5300 Knowsley Expressway improvements, and the Newton Willows interchange scheme. This scheme before you today is the STEP Sustainable Transport Enhancements Package. This is a £41.4 million investment programme which picks up a large number of small-scale transport investments on the highway, the rail and sustainable transport and travel network. A summary of the STEP document is attached in Appendix 1. This report is covered with that, focused on that major scheme business case for the STEP. I won't go through all of the content detailed within 4.1, but basically we have the 41.4 million made available to us as part of this package. It had provisional approval from DFT. Since the growth deal announcement, we've had to undertake further work to get this package of work through to full allocation to ourselves. Given the size and value of the STEP programme, what we've looked to deliver is a 2-year programme of identified schemes with a following 4-year package of schemes that still has further development work to be undertaken to determine the exact nature and detail of those schemes, but that work is currently ongoing with TAG representatives on behalf of each of the City Region partners. So, in approvals of the report, as you're aware from our assurance framework process, we have an independent assessor, Waterman, who take all of the business case approvals and scrutinise those approvals to ensure that they comply with the City Region's defined assurance framework. There were no major deficiencies identified with the business case that's before you today, but Waterman did highlight a number of issues that are picked up in 4.9 in the report. Transport Advisory Group has sought further clarification on these issues. Response from the scheme promoters is picked up as Appendix 2 of the document. The Transport Advisory Group is now satisfied that, based on the assessment that we've received from Waterman's, responses to the queries raised, that the project of schemes is in a position where it can be taken forward, and it's the view of Waterman's as that independent assessor that the business case for the STEP package can be recommended for approval by the Transport Advisory Group to the combined authority. The report covers the resource implications there just on for years 1 and 2, and then there's further issues in relation to 4. Further years, there is a detailed technical report there on the independent assessment of the business cases, and in conclusion, based on the advice of the independent assessor, the Transport Advisory Group recommends the combined authority that it gives approval to the major scheme business case for the Sustainable Transport Enhancement Package of activities to enable scheme promoters to then draw down on funds allocated through the Growth Deal Award. That will bring all of the 4 schemes that we have to get approval for year 1 through to the appropriate point, should you prefer to approve this package of work, and will mean that we now have just short of £70 million worth of package through all of the approval process and assurance process, and ready to move into on-site delivery phase. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks, Frank. Any questions or comments, members? This reports? Robert?
Yeah, can I say, Chair, this is extremely commendable progress. I know the requirements are robust, but the analysis, justification is quite intense. And to get this far, I think is a commendable achievement. £20 million in those first 2 years, Frank, is I think exactly what we need to do. All the other local growth fund allocations already made, approvals made. Just on page 17, I was pleased to see that in years 3 to 6, which I believe could be a more strategic approach in those years. Perhaps you might comment on how that might evolve, that strategic approach in years 3 to 6. But to see the reference to the coastal towns growth zone, I think is also an admirable introduction into the future strategy here. But could you comment particularly on the next 3 to 6 years and how you might deal with that going forward?
Yes, I can. Because of the size of the schemes and because of the DFT requirements to get business cases for the whole £41.4 million package, the concern that we had is trying to pull together the individual elements of scheme detail, scheme design for £41.4 million worth of activity was an incredibly challenging and time-consuming task. And we went to DFT with a proposal that said we can do years 1 and 2, because we already have schemes identified, we can provide data on those schemes, and we can justify a business case against those schemes. But to ask us to be able to have them for years 3 to 6 was really an unacceptable challenge within the time frames that were available. We have been able to persuade DFT that we approve this as a 2-stage process with schemes identified in years 1 and 2 that are currently known and identified city region objectives, but to some extent we are delivering against the growth deal objectives, whereas for years 3 to 6 we want to make sure that they're driven from the growth targets of the city region. So DFT have raised a number of issues with that, but we've been able to get through that process, and the TAG representatives from each of the partners are now looking at identifying schemes for that 3 to 6 year period, which would enable us then to put individual scheme detail back to you as the combined authority to get approval of exactly what sits in those that further year programme. But the concern was if we tried to identify 6 years of scheme at one go, we may run the risk of not being able to get full DFT approval for the package as a whole.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Peter?
Just a quick one, I think on page 28, it's just a reference to Growth Zone 7, coastal towns, and it refers to coastal towns with south of London, village economy generally £1 million a year, supporting growth out jobs is substantially more than that, more than 300 million, so that's a big difference.
Right, okay. mean, I think this is a really welcome report because I think, you know, we've said all along that it's essential that we get on and deliver this funding now that we've managed to secure it. So this is obviously the next step to agree the business case, and then we can just get on with delivery, Frank, I presume, once we've agreed this today. So I think it's important that we do accept the recommendation. So can I ask members, can we agree that recommendation? Is that agreed? Great, thank you very much. Okay, which takes us now on then to item 5, Rail North update. And David, you're going to take us through this, please.
Thanks, Chair. Members will recall the project called Rail North, which is effectively the local transport authorities across the north of England coming together to influence the future rail services that are operated by both Northern and TRANSPENNINE, not rail infrastructure but the train services. During the financial year 2014-15, effectively Rail North had 3 clear challenges. The first was to put in place proper governance across the north, both politically and at an officer level. The second was to influence the DFT's content of its franchise for Northern and TRANSPENNINE. And the third was to effectively lock that into a legally binding partnership agreement between the North, through Rail North, and the Department for Transport. During the year, Rail North Limited, company limited by guarantee, has been put in place. All 29 local transport authorities across the north have come together to become members of the association and nominated 11 directors of Rail North Limited to represent the political views across the north of England. And the directors of Rail North Limited are listed on page 4 for your information, and with Councillor Robinson being the Liverpool City Region representative. That company limited by guarantee is now formally meeting as a company and will be representing the political views of the local transport authorities across the north moving forward. It's the first time, I think, there's a formal political and officer structure that's been put in place across the north representing their views in discussions with government about rail franchising in the north. The second task was to influence the government's specification for train services to be operating across the north, providing local and sub-regional services from April next year. A year ago, it's fair to say that the specification content was aimed at reducing subsidy going to those local rail services, potentially through above inflationary fares increases and reductions in service levels. Rail North has put a significant amount of effort, both politically and at officer level, into working with government to have a specification that better reflects the growth and transformational nature that we require the train services to offer for the north of England. The last 10 years have seen rail services outside of the Merseyrail system that were planned on a no-growth basis. There's been no significant investment or improvement to the rail services. It's pleasing to see, therefore, that the ITTs that were published by the government on the 27th of February almost fully reflect the transformational nature of our requirements in the north for those services. And on pages 35 and 36, you can see the content of those ITTs. The bidding process is currently underway, and bidders have been asked to put in place bids around a number of key factors. The first is more and better train services across the north of England, and the specifications include in excess of 200 additional train services and 300 additional train services on Sundays and evenings, including improvements to services between the Liverpool City Region via St Helens through to Wigan, and improvements on the Southport to Manchester line, as well as significant improvements on the connectivity between Manchester, Warrington and Liverpool. There are also improvements to the frequencies of services between here, Manchester and Leeds on the Chatmoss line, and these are all firm commitments that the government have committed through the ITT process to come into play from the franchise in 2016. On rolling stock, which is one of the key issues about the level of quality and quantity of rolling stock, the specifications contain the requirement for bidders to radically improve both the size and number of trains, but also the quality. And for the first time, for a significant period of time, the ITTs contain the requirement for bidders to purchase at least 120 brand new vehicles to operate in the north of England. And we're busy now arguing that should be a much higher figure, but a commitment for 120 completely new trains we're supported by a range of other customer benefits, including Wi-Fi on all trains, as well as air conditioning on TRANSPENNINE trains, etc. There's also improvements to smart ticketing, customer services, and the continuation funding of community rail partnerships where they exist across the country, as well as investment of around 30 million in small to medium-sized stations, which will significantly benefit certain parts of the city region, potentially in particular the Southport to Manchester route. There's also improvements in the quality regime and the levels of revenue protection that are contained within the IDT. So I think it's fair to say the specifications that have been produced now reflect the transformational nature of the North's requirements compared to what would have been a central government and steady state proposition from a year ago. The final element is the partnership agreement. There is now a legally binding partnership agreement between Rail North and the Department for Transport, which was signed and agreed between the Secretary of State and Rail North directors on the 20th of March this year. That has 4 unique attributes, which are at the top of page 37. The first is that the management of both the Northern and the TRANSPENNINE franchise will be done from the North. There will be an office made available in Leeds, and the team that currently work within the Department for Transport in London managing those franchises will be relocated to Leeds to manage those services on behalf of Rail North. The partnership agreement also contains an assumption that during the period of the franchise, that Rail North will take more responsibility for local rail services, with the potential to let the franchises themselves in 23-24. And that is a positive assumption unless the Secretary of State can prove that the North does not have the capacity and capability to do so. So that's a positive assumption that that will happen unless the government decide otherwise. So it's real devolution of powers with a real timeline to happen over this period of the franchise. And the other 2 elements of that partnership agreement are that if Rail North, so the local authorities, can come forward with other ideas to reduce subsidy, then at least 50% of that subsidy reduction will be retained by Rail North for further investment, as opposed to the current position where that currently goes back down to Treasury. And if Rail North decided to generate additional revenue by fares increases above the rate of inflation, it could do that, and 100% of that revenue could be retained for further investment in the North. So it's a real big step forward in having control over responsibility, but also potential future funding. That franchise will be managed by a strategic board made up of 3 members of Rail North and 3 members of DFT, overseen by an independent chair, and we're busily putting in place the recruitment process for that independent chair to represent Rail North in any future discussions. All those things have been achieved during the last year, and we're now into the next stage of mobilising, making sure that the bidding process brings the right results, and making sure that the Rail North views again are reflected in any further discussions. The recommendations, Chair, in section 2.1 of page 53.
Okay, thanks, David. Comments, questions on this report? No? Okay. Joe?
Just one in terms of 6.1 and the positive assumptions are good. And I think that the final one thing about any revenue generated and stuff, whatever, whether it's increasing the book inflation and things, is all positive. But I think we've got to keep pushing and driving to make sure that these things happen. Because there are assumptions at the moment, and I think that's the issue. We've got to make sure that whatever government folks make, we actually make sure that they go beyond assumptions.
That's absolutely right, and therefore we've pushed really hard that the government wanted to leave them as assumptions. We've now conferred them as actual written in to the legally binding partnership, so any government, irrespective of the result of the general election, is bound by that legally binding. So we've made sure that they're clear milestones, because you're absolutely right, government would have preferred them to have been assumptions for further discussion, but we have locked them into clear milestones with an annual review, which demonstrates the audit trail for us getting that responsibility.
Robert?
Just very briefly, really, just to recall the fact that the role playing line, the military officers in this exercise has been very, very significant. Leading for the North, done a fantastic job. You see the result here, and I think it enhances our reputation, our personal reputation, in a very positive fashion. That's number one. Secondly, I think these are big prizes for the bidders, and therefore to see 5.4 there, so plainly expressed, David, and also see. These are minimum simplification bids and to try and raise the ante, big prizes, long-term contracts, and therefore a great incentive for the winner to produce an impressive deal. And I'm going to be driving forward that agenda to ramp up the offer. But the more it's a two-way process actually, and the expectation that we press upon them for them to win. I think it's important to get that home in a very powerful way.
Thanks. I think the other thing that we found with the project is that across the north, across all political parties, in public and private sector, where we had one script that we were discussions with the department and are now in discussions with the bidders, that helps. So they are committed to at least 120 new trains. We've been briefing all the local transport authorities in their discussions with the bidders. They should be saying that that should be 220 trains because there's a very good business case for that. So the more voices that we can get making that point, I think is absolutely right.
Okay, anybody else? I mean, I'd just like to say I think this model seems to be really working well, and as well as kind of yourself and your team. I think Liam, you've done a really good job representing the city region on the management board. So congratulations to you. So we look forward to seeing this come to fruition and the benefits flow to the city region. So can we agree the recommendations? Is that agreed? Okay, thank you. Right, that then takes us on to item 6, transport for the north next steps. And Liam, you're going to take us through this, please?
Yeah, thanks very much. And this is very much the latest iteration with regards to transport for the north. Will come as no surprise to members of the authority because it's been shared with them throughout the process and there have been regular updates accordingly. The key aspect of the report is actually presenting the full interim report of transport for the north that was launched almost a month ago. We put at the port of Liverpool, and a number of members of the authority, Phil, Peter and Robert, were there to see that launch. Effectively, it pulls together the proposition of what Transport for the North will look to do over the next 12 months on the detailed interventions that it will investigate and look at how we can pull those options together. Crucially for the Liverpool City region, it includes within that the Department for Transport with HS2 Limited will have to investigate the detailed case for a full high-speed link coming all the way into Liverpool, going eastwards towards Manchester, as the start of that east-west trans-north network with a link onto the HS2 network. An intervention that we've long and loudly argued for, and one that we believe has the ability to solve the city region's high-speed requirements, both east-west and north-south. However, it is very much that over the next 12 months, that option and a number of other detailed options right across the north will be investigated. It's incumbent on us that we engage with that process to make sure that that detailed work is done and that the case for that intervention is made and heard and comes to fruition. And crucially, as well as that detailed officer-based work, that we continue the hard, strong political lobbying that needs to go with that to make sure that case continues to be heard and we make sure that comes to fruition accordingly. I think that's the best way of succinctly summing it up, but again, more than happy to take any questions that come through that.
Okay, thanks, Liam. Any comments on this report? Robert?
The meeting, but I might just turn to page 68 and these, there's only 4 lines actually, but they've been hard fought for, and those 4 lines, bottom of the second column there, this is the option for a new high-speed link, line from Liverpool and Manchester connection with the proposed HS2 network. That is the key, that was the breakthrough point. It's not there, it's an important step in a long journey, but I do think it's pivotal, and that is the peg on which we hang the arguments. We should crack the connection east-west, but also direct linkage to HS2. We've been fighting for that for some months now collectively, and those words reflect that big step forward. Precedence, work to be done, work in progress. And the other one, I might just very quickly share, just the final page, in terms of freight, pages 78 and 79, these words do not appear like they're going to hard for, but on left-hand column, page 78, the first reference there is the A5036 in Liverpool, that road upgrade in the autumn statement, and there it is now in this interim report. And finally, on the right-hand side there, in connection with the investment of fuel port, £50 million, and the need to accommodate the freight paths out of that port right into the north of England. So all those flags that we've been working for the last 6 months now appear in this interim report. work still to continue, but it is a major step forward in my view.
Yeah, and thanks for that, Robert. Add to that, actually, on page 79, I think the most important bullet point when it comes towards freight, actually about producing a northern multimodal freight and logistics strategy, because whilst we welcome the interventions that are pledged for the Port of Liverpool already, we actually need something which reflects the movement of freight and logistics right across the board, but crucially with regard to our port and other key locations in the city region. So I think that's where the real detailed work that we will lead on, because the Liverpool city region leads on freight as part of Transport for the North. We have the opportunity to pull together a very transformational vision of how we move goods across the North of England.
Okay. Any other? And Liam, just finally from me, I mean, presumably we need to keep the pressure up, particularly on any new government to make sure the funding for this is in place the other side of the election.
Yeah, without a doubt, whatever happens on May the 7th, we need to make sure that our compelling vision for high-speed links and all the additional connectivity benefits we need to see that comes from this becomes a reality. So the lobbying must continue apace and, if anything, get louder and stronger.
Okay, so can we agree the recommendations on that report? They agreed? Okay, thank you. We'll now move on then to item 7, which is update on European Union 2014 to 2020 programme. And Jed, you're going to take us through this, please.
Thanks, Chair. The report is a combination really of a kind of general update on the current situation with the EU funding programme for 2014 to 2020. Highlights a number of key issues and risks. The first and most prevalent, because it kind of underpins a lot of the points, is around the increasing nationalisation of the whole of the EU regime and the way in which spend and allocation outputs and management are actually going to be taken elsewhere rather than what we've been used to, obviously, over recent decades from our point of view. Within that highlights the risk of underperformance, because if we fail to deliver out on things that we put forward, then obviously that money is likely to be pooled and redistributed elsewhere. On the plus side of that is if we do perform and deliver ours and other areas don't, then we've got a chance of being able to increase the amount of money that flows into the city region from that point of view. So the emphasis is absolutely going to be on delivery and making sure that we can actually over-deliver on things that we intend to commit to. Second point to highlight, Chair, I think the combined authority members will be well aware of this. There's substantially less money in this programme than that which we've been previously used to, and as you know, we took this as far as judicial review and court action around the agenda on this particular point. But there still remains, I think, an issue about what you might refer to as expectation management of partners and bidders locally, to make sure that people realise the reality of what we now have as opposed to what we've been used to, again, over recent decades. That points to the need to develop a communications plan and to maintain that and kind of build that down on that set of information. And we're on with that piece of work at the moment. And then finally to flag up that we will need to review some of the governance structures around the EU funding programme, how that aligns to the combined authority, and how we also utilise technical assistance and those other kind of forms of funding that become actually more meaningful and more important in this context than, again, we've been used to previously. So a general update, but one or two points of concern and one or two risk factors which we'll come back to in future meetings ahead of Senate.
Thanks, Jed. Any comments, Peter?
Just a point of clarity, if I may, Chair. I think on page 94, ESF calls, the ESF calls for this reason, blah, 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 worth 19.684. I thought that was a substantial more figure than that, 50.8, of which 40 million is the local programme, employment programme, but I'm not quite sure. Can we just get clarity on that?
Jed, can you?
Don't necessarily nudge yet, just...
Okay.
Sorry,
Oh, Sue, you got the answer, have you?
Okay, Chair. The reference about the ESF call is only part of the ESF call at the moment, and it's just linked to the Youth Employment Initiative. That's why it's low.
Yeah, Barry?
Thanks very much, Chair. Jed, given that, thanks for the paper, but given that the nationalisation of the money is there not a real danger that the government is going to direct our spend possibly away from our priorities, which is already as a combined authority we've set out? And I just wonder whether or not we should write to government again outline what our priorities are and put that down on paper for them.
Thanks, Chair. I think there is a risk of that. There's no question about that. I suspect part of this might depend on what happens around the 7th of May. And I'd be more than happy to draft something, obviously, but I would suggest maybe we would leave it till after 7th of May and then take a view accordingly. I'm more than happy to share that around authority members when we know what government is in place and can second guess what line they're likely to take on this kind of issue.
So anybody else? Robert?
Just to say, I think, Chair, this is a disappointing trend. We see here movement from local priorities, local knowledge with local schemes and opportunities. And it's now been nationalised, to use that phrase, linked to therefore national programme with national outputs, and that's not, that doesn't seem complementary, it doesn't align to what we would like to see locally in some ways. So that is disappointing. And also the allocation itself is by no means certain. There is some upside in that as well as an downside risk. I think that the governance is important, and what we've got to do is argue our corners still in terms of our local priorities and how we understand the issues clearly, but also produce a governance structure which is robust and therefore impresses, and therefore those who are managing this nationally listen to what we're saying. It works, it shines, and it also will deliver results, and therefore I would hope the superior presentation will become the current national trend currently being imposed in this situation. But we have to work hard. It's going in the wrong direction, not what we expected, and what the region really deserves.
Okay. Any other comments? Can I just sort of support your comment about managing expectations, Joe? I attended an EU information day a couple of weeks ago where we kind of updated all the partners in the city region on the programme, and the room was absolutely packed because obviously people thought there was a big pot of European money, that they wanted to access, and as you say, the new programme is, radically less than the previous programme. So, I think the communication of that is essential, and people need to be realistic about what is achievable within this new programme, because the quantum of funding is just not going to be there. That's a big challenge for us. Joe.
I mean, it's spot on, and it is about the management expectations, but it doesn't also mean to say that we don't lose sight of the reason why if you like, the rollout of the programme or the distribution of the funding that was done. We've been to court, everyone knows. We challenged the distribution in court, and so the politics of this is this was linked to austerity, where the subsidiarity arguments about putting in extra was actually reversed by the Tories, and they actually used this money to prop up the cuts that they were making elsewhere. And obviously Wales got a better deal than us, Scotland got a better deal than England, and so on. And it may well be an opportunity for us post the election to actually emphasise that again and say, look, here's what we've had before. This is the level of reduction that we've had, and this is what Wales has got or Scotland has got. We need to make that case. And it doesn't mean to say that just because it's being done to us now that we have to accept that we can't unpick this or unravel this or make the case for stronger and more investment into our region, but also about more investment into England and have that fairer distribution.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, so you can see the recommendations before you in paragraph 2. Can we agree those recommendations? Yeah, okay, thank you. And then finally, item 8, minutes of the audit committee, 10th of March. Can I ask if these can be confirmed? Agreed. Okay, I've not been informed of any other urgent items, so can I thank everybody for their attendance and for your contributions to this meeting, and remind you that the next meeting of the Combined Authority will be at 11 o'clock on Friday the 19th of June.
Can I just raise one of the business, and maybe something for you to do on our behalf, is I noticed a press report today that the Tories are looking at the issue of tunnels. And maybe amazingly so, after years of neglecting it. I think it'd be good maybe for you to write on behalf of the combined authority to say and suggest that you know, gerrymander and funder to try and win votes over in the Wirral is something that we won't tolerate. And this combined authority has asked for a review of the tunnel and the payments and all of those things. And we'll do it because it's the right thing to do, not to win votes. And I think it's important that you, on behalf of the combined authority, make that position absolutely clear that we recognise what this is. It's just an attempt to win votes.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. It's you'd be surprised. Yeah, it's amazing that you know, they've had an opportunity to do this over the last 5 years, and then 3 weeks before the election, they realised they need to do something. So yeah, are we happy if I write along those lines on behalf of the combined authority? Is that agreed? Yeah, great. Okay, can I thank everybody for their attendance and close the meeting? Thank you.